Your old boss put a grease fitting in somebody's toolbox and emptied a whole tube of grease into it. That's pretty awesome. That reminds me of filling toolboxes with stuff, and I don't remember stepwise who messed with who first, but I do remember filling one guy's box up with MIG wire, which I think I heard somebody else in the comments say flux core. We use flux core at that shop. Just turned off the gas and turned up the inches per minute, and then bloop, fed it in one of the little holes of the toolbox. And oh my God, probably fed like an entire spool, 60-pound spool into it. And then I remember as payback, maybe for that wire spool one, I helped someone pry open the door to another guy's toolbox so that we could fill it with like a contractor bag full of packing peanuts from the shipping department. And then there was another time that we got one of those guys' toolboxes open and they created a large male phallus out of tubing and an end cap. I mean, this thing was huge. And then they also got some rags from out back and made a scrote out of them and spooled off a bunch of MIG wire and made little curlies and stuck it in the bag for underneath it. So it was as anatomically correct as it could be. And then I think maybe filled that box up with packing peanuts. So as soon as he, unlocked his box, we'd managed to unlock it and then lock it back up. So once he popped it open, everything falls out. And then of course there's this big old hog leg just pointing at him because it was welded on the far backside of his toolbox. So like pointing straight at him. I didn't have any part in that. I was a laughing witness for that one. And I don't remember what I did to that dear cute inspector I was sweet on. Maybe it's hard to prank people that were back in the office. Maybe I glued his coffee mug down or something. I did something foolish, but I came in the next day and I'm pretty sure that my lock had been my box was locked. So I don't know how this individual did it, but I opened up my drawers on my toolbox. I had that filing cabinet and they were filled with shredded paper, out of a shredder, that real fine. I was just looking for some, and I think I still, from these toolboxes from back in the day, I've still got some of that fine shredded, confetti paper. It just bags and bags and bags of this. And when I texted him, I was like, anything about my toolbox being full of shredded paper? And I got simply a one-word response, mice. And of course, we always had the token. I'm not sure what this is, but these were drawn all over and left all over for us to find years down the road. Oh yeah, and the flammable gases too. I'll save that for a whole other video. They cracked down on that after that. Proportional response to industry pranks. Nah, bro. You know as well as I do, if you've been in industry, that the name of the game is one-upsmanship. I remember the great Toolbox Wars of 2003, where all the different shifts were messing with each other's stuff. And it was never anything that was detrimental to the tools or to the job. It was just messing with each other. And I think it went something like night shift hid the toolbox of one of the day shift guys. And we had roll around toolboxes. So the guys who like to spend the money had the big snap-on cabinets or, the actual formal tool cabinets that rolled around so they could move from job to job around the shop. And then there were those of us that had the 2-door filing cabinets on casters. And one guy had a locker he built a little frame on, a straight-up locker, two lockers. And then he also had a toaster oven on it and a television so we could have the game on when we worked Sundays. So we had all manner of toolboxes, but they were big roll-arounds. And then most of them also had the just regular handheld toolboxes on them too, right? That was the issue we had in the boiler shop I'm talking about. And so night shift took one of the day shift guys' big roll-arounds and put it in between the columns. There was a high bay and a low bay in this big long shop, and there were columns that stood upright, keeping the building up, and the columns kind of collect things like tools, all of the 440 line drops, and old print boards that we didn't use anymore. So they had shoved this toolbox in between the columns and kind of covered it up halfway with a tarp. And apparently the guy burned up 90 minutes trying to find his toolbox. So day shift guy suspected which night shift guy had done this to him and went and got his toolbox and took just this part. And when the night guy came in, he saw this part was missing and he went looking for it and he actually found it, not too difficult.
It was out in the middle of the shop floor, and this one's actually my favorite. He's like, oh, haha, you know, you walked my toolbox all the frick the way out back. Now I gotta go get it. He went up to grab it. They had welded it to the bar grating in the drain. So the guy had to, I don't know, chisel it apart or grind it apart. So night shift guy had to go find his little toolbox that had been welded to the floor. And so they burned up 90 minutes, at least probably, grabbing a bunch of scrap tube, Schedule 40, out of the dumpster and welding a cage around first shift guy's toolbox. And I mean, this thing was solid. It was rugged. It was heavy. So the bottom part of this guy's roll around had like 1, 2, 3, I don't know, like 6 pipes around the thing. So he couldn't open his drawers until he cut this whole thing apart. And of course, his air grinder was in the drawers, so he had to use his buddy's grinder to do it. And I think the last step before management got involved was day shift took night shift dude's toolbox, run it up on a crane, and they got a ladder or something, and they welded it to the rafters up in the corner down by the clamshell oven where we did heat treat, where nobody goes. It's like no man's land. And they managed to weld the guy's toolbox like, I don't know, 25 feet up in the air. And that's just the way pranks go. So I feel one-upsmanship is usually what you see when you get into piddling matches like that.